welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Happy Thursday, everyone. For today's video, I have a makeover for you guys of a little shelving unit that I picked up a while back at the Goodwill. I think I paid $3.99 for it. It had some issues that I had to fix, and so a lot of the video is regarding getting it ready for paint, and then I kept the makeover kind of simple. I love how it came together. I hope you guys do too. And without further ado, let's get to today's project. So here is today's project. It's a little vintage bookshelf that I picked up for $3.99 at Goodwill. It was wobbly, and when I got it back to my shop, I realized the reason was that it had some serious wood rot on the bottom. Initially, I had thought about putting Bondo down there and trying to fix that. Then I decided to try and sand it smooth. That was a disaster. I think I actually ended up making things worse. So I just went ahead for the time being and sanded the outside of it just to get it nice and smooth. It had a couple cracks from age, so I wanted to smooth those out as well. Once I brought the little shelf inside, I looked at it for a while, trying to come up with a solution to make it sturdy. And in the end, I decided the only proper thing to do would be to take it completely apart and then cut both sides to get rid of the wood rot so that they were perfectly even and the little shelf would be sturdy again. As I began the process of dismantling this little shelf, I initially tried using my big drill, but the big drill, it has too much torque, and these flathead screws are old, some of them are rusty, and it just kept slipping. So I ended up having to go with a handheld screwdriver. Now, of course, you guys are getting the very abridged version of this process. These screws were so rusty that some of them took me several minutes to get out. In all, it took me about an hour to get this little shelf taken apart. Once it was apart, I needed to cut the bottom of each side so that they were nice and straight and even. So I used my square to draw a straight line across the bottom of one side, and then I took the board outside and used my miter saw to cut where I had drawn the line. And of course, my miter saw isn't quite wide enough to go across the entire board. So after making the first cut, I had to flip the board around, line everything back up, and finish cutting. Then I used the first board to draw a line on the second board and cut that off as well. Now, as I had mentioned before, many of my screws for this little bookshelf were very rusty, and I did a little research online and read that vinegar can help remove rust. So I took them home, I left them in vinegar overnight, brought them back to work the next day, and you can see how brown that vinegar is from taking off a lot of the rust. There was still a little bit in some areas though, so I went over each one with a little scrub brush and got as much of that rust off as I possibly could before I put the little shelf back together again. While my screws were drying, I figured it was a good time to do a little cleaning, and so I grabbed my crud cutter and started cleaning all of my pieces. I am just wiping them down really well, and then once I have one side clean with the crud cutter, I'm taking some clean water and just rinsing those off, and then continuing this process until I have all of my pieces nice and clean and ready to go back together. Once all my pieces were clean and dry, it was time to put my little shelving unit back together again. Starting with the bottom shelf, I just slid my screws back into where they belonged, made sure everything lined up, and then I had to hold a little bitty square nut with a pair of pliers while I tried to thread the screw through the wood into the hole and then into the hole in the nut. This process was a little time consuming and very frustrating, but I eventually did get the hang of it, and I just worked through the entire little shelf one screw at a time. I did try to use my drill again, but same thing. It had too much torque and I just couldn't keep the drill bit from slipping. So it was back to hand screwing every one of the screws into this piece. Once I had those first two shelves attached, I decided it was time to test the sturdiness of my little shelf. So I propped it up and just made sure that it was nice and steady. And thank goodness, you guys, it was. And now that I knew that my little bookshelf was sturdy, I went ahead and installed my final shelf. I did go around as well and make sure that all of my screws were really, really tight as I could possibly get them before I stood it up. At this point, I was really excited to start painting this project, but there was one more little issue I wanted to address. This top piece of wood was just a little loose, and I decided I wanted to tighten it up some. So I took some wood glue and went right along that seam and placed a nice bead of wood glue. And then I used my flathead screwdriver to kind of push that glue down into the crack. Once I had that done, I cleaned everything up a little bit, and then I grabbed out some clamps and clamped everything into place and left it sit for several hours before I moved on to paint. Once my glue was dry and I took the clamps off, it was finally time to put some paint on my little shelf. Now, originally I'd planned on painting it white or cream, but in the end I decided to go with more of a spring color, and this one is called Sweetie Jane, and it's by Sweet Pickins Milk Paint. I did add Extra Bond to my paint because I didn't want any chippiness or crackle where there was a finish. So the original finish on this was a little bit slick and I just didn't want to chance it. I also forgot to mention that I did shellac over all of my screw heads. You can kind of see the shine there. I wanted to make sure that if there was any rust left on my screws or the washers, that it wouldn't bleed into my paint. And then I am carefully going around each of those screws as I paint, because in the off chance that somebody eventually wants to take this little shelf apart again, I wanted them to be able to unscrew it and not have the screw heads all full of gunky paint. Now, I did end up putting 3 coats of paint on this little shelf, even though, as you can see here, the second coat gave me pretty good coverage. There were still just a couple places where the wood was kind of poking through still, and I always like to sand really well when I'm finished with a piece, and so I like to have a nice thick coat of paint on before I sand. Once I was finished painting my little shelf and it was completely dry, I took it outside to give it a good sanding. Sweet Pickins milk paint tends to be a little chunky at times, and sometimes it can leave a little grit behind, and I like to have a nice smooth finish. So I like to go over my pieces with sandpaper. This one was nice because most of the surfaces were pretty flat, so I could use my palm sander, and I've got it on its lowest setting with just some 220 grit sandpaper. Now for this piece, I wanted to give it just a little bit of a time-worn finish, so I am doing a little bit of distressing just around the edges. If you don't like distressing, you could absolutely skip that step. Once I was finished sanding and satisfied with my distressing, I brought it back inside and washed it down really well with a damp shop towel, just trying to get all of the sanding dust removed before I seal it. For this piece, I decided to keep things really simple, and I am sealing my paint with a coat of DIY's clear wax, and then I am going to call it good. I am not adding any colored wax to this. I decided for this little shelf, I really wanted the Sweetie Jane to be the star of the show, and I didn't want to change the tone of that paint at all. To apply my wax, I'm just using my soft bristle brush, and I'm going over the entire shelf, including the bottom of the shelves. I did sand them to clean them up a little bit, so they needed sealed as well. And then I am wiping back the excess with a dry shop towel. Now I know this definitely wasn't my fanciest makeover. I didn't add any decoupage paper or transfers or anything like that, but I really wanted the paint to kind of speak for itself. And for me, I'm just really pleased with the fact that I saved this little shelving unit from the landfill. I just really hope you guys like it as much as I do. Well, that is it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my little shelving project, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then, of course, don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know if you loved my little shelf as much as I do. Just a quick reminder, too, I do carry a full range of DIY products here in my shop, as well as on my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry DIY paint and products, as well as Sweet Pickins milk paint and products, along with some Recycled Treasures decoupage papers, and of course Redesign with Prima. So if you're in need of anything, check those out there. And then for Sunday's video, I really don't know at this point exactly what that's going to look like. There's a possibility I might not get one done in time for Sunday, only because, number one, this shelving unit took me a lot longer than I had really planned for. I got a bunch of inventory in for the nursery that I had to go through, and then I'm having an event here on Saturday. So there's really not been a lot of time to get in the kitchen and do anything but work on that shelf. So we'll see. If I can pull myself together, I might have something for Sunday. If not, I'll see you back here on Thursday. But until I see you again, thank you so much for being here. I hope your week is going well and you have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you again soon. Bye.